This is light work. Come on, spill the tea. Yeah. Ooh.
Hey y'all,
What's good?
I'm Laura.
And I'm Dee. And welcome to Spill the Tea with Laura and Dee.
All right, what is our topic today? What are we talking about?
I'm glad you asked. Our Candid Convo for today is home renovation trends in Atlanta. So we're going to break this up into 3 sections. So DIY, what to stay away from, what is reasonable to do, tips and tricks on that. Then eco-friendly home renovation ideas, as well as maximizing a space in small properties.
Very cool. Maximizing a space in small properties.
Yes.
That's a big deal in today's time with the price of homes.
Yes.
All
So starting off with DIY renovation, things not to do. Anything structural, just don't.
No.
Electricity, please don't.
No.
Plumbing, I'd rather you not.
Yes.
But sometimes like little small, if you're just fixing a sink,
a small leak.
if you understand it, maybe. But if you've got a bigger, I'm just scared there's a bigger underlying problem with plumbing, and there always is, right? So for me, it's a no.
Polybutylene pipes.
Right. Cast iron.
Let's just keep going down the list.
Also, I would say things that are probably easier to do is like some of the lighter weight stuff, like interior doors. Mm-hmm. Lexi and I were looking through a couple of homes, and she saw some outdated bifold doors.
I love to update a bifold door. Yes.
Well, right.
They work awful, but they're amazing. They look really good.
Lexi looked away from the house. She was like, I don't want this house. I was like,
does she know my door in the kitchen is a bifold door that does not look like a bifold door?
I told her how easy it is to update them. But she was looking completely, she was like, no, this is way too outdated. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Right. But like those doors are very lightweight, and that's something that's relatively easy to just change out. Painting, if you have the patience for it.
No. Nobody should paint.
Nobody should paint? Okay. Personally, I don't have the patience for it.
That's the problem.
Because it's like, it's one thing to throw up a coat of paint and then maybe throw a second coat of paint. But really, you kind of need like a third coat of paint and some touch-ups.
You need patience and a steady hand if you're going to paint.
Right.
Most people have neither.
I have an aunt that has a very steady, that is the only person where I'm like, DIY paint, go for it. But otherwise, it's just like you can make a paint job look so bad.
Correct.
On accident.
Correct. Well, it's know your limitations, right? If you're going to step in and you're going to do the renovation yourself, and you're trying to flip a property, you're trying to make it perfect for you to live in. Mm-hmm. As a realtor, my skin crawls and I cringe when I get a call from a seller who's like, I'm so excited. I have been working on my house for 6 months and it is ready for you to come see. We want to list in 3.
Why is it always DIY?
Correct. And so my biggest piece of advice, if you're going to go in, if you're going to flip, if you're going to do the project yourself, know your limitations. Mm-hmm. Understand what it is you can't do. Because if you're trying to sell your house, if you bought a house and you're going to go in, you're going to do all the work yourself, and you're going to do some of the do-it-yourself projects, make sure you understand your limitations and know what you can do well and what you cannot do well.
Right.
Because while painting yourself may save you $7 to $10 grand on a project,
right,
doing it poorly will cost you 20 to 50 in the sale.
Right.
Because a buyer is going to see that and be like, oh my God, they didn't tape it. And they notice these things, right? Mm-hmm. They notice when you get paint on the ceiling and you're exhausted. You've been painting for 2 days straight and you're like, fuck it. I don't care if there's paint on the ceiling. I don't care if there's paint on the floor. My back hurts. You're going to have a crick in your neck here. Your arm's going to hurt. Like, it's awful. Like it is awful. So know your limitations when you're doing renovations, because to your point, there are small tasks and smaller jobs that can be done that are money savers, right, whereas the bigger jobs that matter need to be done at a high level.
Honestly,
correct,
right.
Correct. And so some of the smaller tasks that I think people can do, trim is actually easy. Believe it or not, it's just like a matter, if you measure well, trim is fairly easy. Tile.
Okay,
tile is a fairly easy, like if you're a newer renovator and you're trying to do some projects on your own, tile is extremely forgiving, believe it or not. Small cuts, thin pieces, that's where your tile gets a little bit tricky, but for the most part, Tile's pretty easy. Like I really enjoy tile. I would say that from an electrical standpoint, changing out fans and lights are relatively easy in your home if your electrical is correct in your home. When you get up there and you take stuff out and the wires are not the right colors and all the things, make sure you understand how electrical works, but that's a fairly easy upgrade.
Right.
That is not expensive. You can get fans on overstock.com. You can get lighting on overstock.com and places like that where it's fairly inexpensive.
Right. And
when you get done, I mean, we took a fan out of my living room. I know it sounds crazy. We removed a fan, closed up the hole.
Right.
But I have 9-foot ceilings, so they're low, and the living room doesn't get hot. And it was crazy how much that changed the look of the living room. All of a sudden, what felt like a small closed-in living room didn't have something hanging from the ceiling. Felt more roomy, more open, more airy. It was a much, painted the walls a little lighter color, made the room feel better.
I would add on to that one, some of these little smart home devices, sometimes those can be relatively straightforward to change out. I would be careful with the 3-gang ones because sometimes
we screwed that up in my house really bad.
It's like if you have a very simple 2-gang one, it's pretty straightforward. But when you start getting into the 3 different ones, it may just want to call someone. Because I got lucky on one, but by the time I went back to it and I was looking at other people, I was like, oh, I could have messed that up.
Greg tried so hard. Now my light works. Doesn't matter which one's on, which one's off. They all work. But yes. In hardware. Hardware is another really, really, really easy relative project that will change a room, right? Again, when we were working on our kitchen, the first thing we did was change the hardware on the cabinets. And it was like just that small change from something that was a little bit more country bumpkin to something that was a little bit more contemporary, a little bit more modern, matched his style a little bit better. Just a square black knob on our lighter cabinets. So it really pops. You can really see it. Whereas the knobs that we had on there before were muted. Right. They kind of blended into the cabinets a little bit. And now you can really see it. But those are jobs, if you're going to do it yourself, those are jobs that I would encourage you to take on. Right. If you're starting to learn. Paint and flooring, that's like project 10.
Yeah, I would say anything that you're confident you could do in like less than a day may be reasonable to do, because I think one of the ones where I thought to myself, I was like, okay, this is not a DIY project. When I took the, what's that really old design people used to put on the ceilings? And it's like a spiky thing. It's very old school.
Stipple?
Yeah.
Like a textured ceiling?
I remember I took...
That's not a DIY. That's a DIY. That is a professional.
It is definitely not. And the reason is because you can see on the ceiling where I did a really good job.
Right.
And then you can see where I was like, Lexi was like, well, we need to hurry up. I'm ready to bring the stuff in.
It's Lexi's fault.
Well, it was really my fault, because it was like I didn't really think about how long it was going to take. Yeah. And if I had been able to do it in a day, then maybe, but
and what's
the kitchen maybe could have been done something I did.
Fine, a smaller space. And what's going to happen is when you and Lexi get ready to sell, right? It happened yesterday. I was walking through the house. We were doing a walkthrough at the end of due diligence with a buyer who wanted to go through one last time, make sure they were good to go, first time home buyer. And he looked up at the ceiling, and to your point, because someone had done it themselves and the ceiling pattern didn't match, he's like, that's what the inspector was talking about. And I'm like, and that's what the seller told us was fixed by a professional and hasn't leaked in 7 years. And he's like, yeah, but it's there. So, right, buyers can't get past that. And so things that you cannot do well, don't do. In paint, unfortunately, many people think paint is easy. That is the hardest thing in a house to make
Lexi
look pretty.
was really good at paint. She hated going through it and doing it.
Oh, me too. I'm very good at it too.
Like by the time we went upstairs, she was just like,
I will kill you. Like, I will divorce you if you make me paint.
I didn't make her. I was like, let's just break down and hire somebody. Because I'm not helping. I'm sorry.
I'm out. I'll fuck up the ceiling, but I ain't fucking up.
So I think we ended up getting Jeff to help us out with that one.
He's a good guy to know. All right. What's our next question?
Eco-friendly renovation ideas. I think trying to reuse as many things as you can get. Finding pieces off of Facebook Marketplace. Finding pieces off of Craigslist.
Do you know they tear down buildings and you can buy the used material from buildings? Like in the city of Roswell, I believe the statute still says that in the city of Roswell, if you're putting up a business and there are empty buildings, you cannot erect a new building. You have to take one down.
Right.
And a lot of times when those buildings down, they take them down with the purpose of reusing them. So you can actually go in and buy an old building.
Right.
For relatively inexpensive. The materials, you're not buying the land and what it sits on, right? But you're buying the materials. And that's a benefit to the landowner because now the land is cleared back off. And so if you're on North Point Parkway a lot of people don't know this, but there was a Razoo's and I don't remember what the other restaurant was on North Point and Haynes Bridge. And they went belly up a few years after they opened. And probably about 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, you saw crews out here taking them down. The guts of both of those buildings are now in a building in Roswell because they pulled it down.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not just items that you can reuse. You can go in and reuse items from other buildings.
Right.
To where you're structurally recreating something that normally would go in a landfill or using what would normally go in a landfill.
Right. I've also seen where people will have gardens in the back and kind of set up. They'll have a setup to where they can catch the rainwater so that they don't have to keep using their own water to pull it over in there.
Correct. Yeah. From an exterior standpoint, rain barrels are fantastic. You're looking to update the inside of your home. Lots of programs out there for eco-friendly windows. A lot of people don't think about their windows, but you've got cracks around your windows and doors that air gets in. So we're constantly pushing out more air conditioner or heating. So, that kind of minimizes that. Eco-friendly homes not only help the environment, but it's a win for everybody because it's going to help your pocketbook as well. Another eco-friendly material that we're seeing a lot is spray foam insulation. The blow-in insulation breaks down over time, so it has to be replaced, whereas the spray foam insulation is going to not break down, right? It's going to stay in your house, and again, that helps with heating and cooling, so that's another really good option. You have your solar panels and your windows and your solar panels, depending on your area that you're in, there may actually be programs where they'll come in and install those at no or very low cost to the homeowner.
Right.
To try to help out with that. You were mentioning paint. So there is some eco-friendly paint. Paint's kind of all over the place. I love Sherwin-Williams, no plug, but they have really good products from an environmental standpoint and also from a safety standpoint. So the paint in Sherwin-Williams, you can actually get paint that is mold resistant. So like if you're trying to paint your bathroom or your kitchen or someplace that may have a garage that may have a lot of moisture in and out throughout the day or whatever, you may want to use a paint that's going to eliminate mold from being inside your home.
Right.
While that's not eco-friendly, it does eliminate you from bringing in other chemicals from the growth of mold. So long term, it kind of has a little bit of an impact on that as well. And so those are kind of my suggestions when you're looking for an eco-friendly home is kind of, look at the different programs in your cities and get to know them. If you have questions, we have some here. There's some that I kind of follow. I want solar panels as well. The next house that we build, I'm looking into solar panels. But yeah, so that would be my suggestion on an eco-friendly build is just kind of look into the programs that are in your city and know what's important in your area, right? Know your weather conditions in your area to where this product is going to work well for your house or your environment.
Right. And then lastly, maximizing a space in small properties. I think one of my favorites that I've seen is where people will set up their furniture almost like they're sectioning off little, not rooms, but almost like little sections that are used for certain things, right? They have like a little reading area. And they have like their living area where they're watching TV with their family. Anything else you think?
Yeah, so I actually am starting to get into the tiny home community, which has been really fun. So I have a client who's all about tiny homes right now. So I'm seeing all kind of really cool designs in these homes. A lot of tiny homes are built very trailer-esque. So they're very long and thin. So you have kind of like a hallway and then living, right? So you kind of walk down one side of the house and living on the other. I also have a client, she was a first-time home buyer. She bought a house. I've got a few clients, first-time home buyers, who bought houses that were well under like 500 square feet. Like they were pretty tiny. And so a lot of times what you find is multi-use products. right? So you will see something that will double as two things.
Right.
Doors are my favorite. So right now, doors are fantastic in these tiny home spaces because instead of having a door, right, that's thick, they're hollowing the door out and making it thinner and then turning the door into shelving space. So if you've got a pantry door and you've got a tiny, tiny pantry, you know, on that door, you may have some space for your spices.
Right.
I think it's so cool. It's a design feature in this space. It also takes less room. Helps with right. You've got a door. I mean, if you can put stuff in the door as a shelf, then obviously that helps with storage. Things that double or fold away is nice. So we are seeing a lot of tables. A lot of times in these tiny homes or in these spaces,
that's right.
You won't have room for an actual table. So you know, what is the fix for that? A lot of times it's something that'll go up on the wall, fold down, and it'll be in a space in your kitchen where it makes sense for you to cook. Prep, right? So it becomes a prep space and then it turns into your eating space. So that's kind of a cool thing.
I've seen that with those. Lexi and I wanted one because our space is relatively smaller.
Right.
And we were going to get one of those beds that like comes down.
It's called a Murphy bed.
Yeah. I was thinking Murphy bed, but I was like, watch me say it and it be wrong.
So a Murphy bed is a really cool item or a really cool thing for a room. A lot of Murphy beds that I like, the design that I like is when you have the whole wall is the bed, and on either side they'll built-in
Like
bookshelves,
shelves,
right? So you can't tell
Those
that
are
it's
always our favorite.
that's a bed when it's up. It doesn't look weird. So that is a huge space saver in homes. And we're seeing furniture, which I think is really a cool design as well. So IKEA, great furniture for small space. They have lots and lots of things in their store that will give you multi-purposes or whatever. So mirrors. We're seeing a lot of mirrors that will open, right? It'll be a small thing.
Oh, like the little medicine cabinet
Kind
mirrors.
of, but it's now a big full body mirror, right? It's something you would hang on your wall. You would look at, you know, am I dressed beautifully? Yes, you look fabulous. But then when you open it, all your jewelry or whatever.
Right.
And so your accessories are in there.
Oh, that's smart. Utilizing the underside of your bed. Some folks will either get like little plastic containers put under the bed,
and make it like drawers.
But then some like beds are actually built where they have the storage under them. I would have never thought to put it behind a mirror, like a big one.
Yes. Yep. So right behind a mirror. And my favorite space saver, it's a kitchen space saver. So your kick plate underneath your cabinets is empty space.
What?
Totally empty, right? It's just, you know, you have a cabinet and then that space down there is empty. So we are starting to see cabinet makers that will put drawers in down there.
Oh, kind of like the little drawer under the oven?
Kind of like that, except it goes all around the bottom of your cabinets.
Right.
So when you kick that out or you pull it out, my favorite, summer stools. We're putting one in my kitchen so that I can see,
the
right?
fold-up one?
No, it's just a little thing that slides out and it stands about this tall and it lifts you, right? You just stand on it.
Oh, wow.
So at the oven, I will be able to pull that out and see because I burn myself on pots. I'm too short. I can't reach over the top. So
oh, no.
I need a stool and I don't want to have to, right? I don't want to have to hide it. I don't want to have to put it somewhere and go get it. So we're going to put a kick plate underneath my stove so that it can come out so that I can.
burnt myself once as a kid in the kitchen.
Once in your whole life?
And I stayed out of the kitchen for like, so I was such a baby.
How do you get away with burning yourself only once? But yes, so those are great space savers as well because you can utilize those kickouts with small drawers for cookie pans. You can use it for.
I was just thinking that.
Well, and there's lots of things like think about your big drawer with all your mixing spoons and stuff, right? You just need a flat space if you're like me. I like them all spaced out where I can see them on. They got to be perfect, and so those flat drawers help for that kind of stuff.
Right.
There's a lot of spaces in your home that are not used.
Right.
And so it's just a matter of finding those and building them out and making them usable.
Do you keep I've always had like a junk drawer. I never know what to do with that drawer.
Throw it away. It's junk. I don't understand a junk drawer. We have a drawer in my kitchen that has junk in it.
And you go through and throw it out, don't you?
Well, I straighten it. It's very neat for a junk drawer. I'm not allowed to throw it out because my husband needs a junk drawer. And I ask him all the time why we need the junk. Because we do. Do you know when the only thing I ever use in the junk drawer are the spare keys.
I'm always pulling stuff out the junk drawer though.
And the batteries. We have batteries and spare keys in my junk drawer.
Our batteries don't fit in our junk drawer.
We have so many ink pens in our junk drawer that nobody uses them. When the kids need ink pens, they go buy new ones.
Oh, they're in the junk drawer.
Well, the junk drawer, yeah. So get rid of the junk drawer in your kitchen.
Oh,
that is not a good space saver.
Save space in our house.
Yes. Oh, tiny spaces. One other place that a lot of people are utilizing is under stairs. So
I really want to, right? Because we could put our dogs under there.
Cute,
and then
cute space for dogs. Lots of dog houses going under stairs.
That becomes storage.
Correct. So if you've got a tiny space and you've got stairs, or if you can get in the attic, a lot of times tiny houses are only one story, so you can see all the way down. You can actually see behind the walls what has empty space and what doesn't. So when you're building out those tiny spaces, or if you've got a smaller home, stairs is a great place to utilize, because a lot of times that's just a structure that's got just dead space in it.
Right.
So look in that. Sometimes closets as well. Sometimes you take some extra space from closets.
What do you think about those space dividers? I feel like it works well in corporate buildings, but I haven't seen them as much in residential homes.
Normally we don't see in a space that you're trying to define. To your point earlier, it's normally the furniture that's going to define that space. Like if it's a reading nook, you're going to have a cute little beanbag or a comfy chair, and it's going to be over in the corner, and it's going to be obvious that person is utilizing that space to sit and be comfy.
Right.
You're going to have a small table. And foldable furniture, that's another good space saver for tiny houses. So like your kitchen table, if your sides will fold down.
Oh, yes.
You have the wings. Up, down.
Then that way you can almost choose between hosting.
Correct.
Versus just
you.
Having your family.
And a bench, right? So a bench fits under your table, stays out of your walkway. So when you're thinking about seating.
That makes sense. I used to never understand the benches.
It's a lot of times so you can push it out of the way. Smaller spaces, you'll notice a lot of times the bench will be up against the wall, so the table can almost be up against the wall.
Right.
Tiny spaces are coming back. Did you know that there are, I believe, 3 states in this country that have an additional type of housing, and it's multifamily housing? That for not like we are single family housing in the state of Georgia, right? And then you have multifamily units, right, where it's duplexes or whatever. But in Oregon, California, I think Michigan, or if there are any other states, they actually have multi-family living, meaning you may have different generations within the house. And so they're building houses to accommodate that.
Right.
And a lot of times, like here, you're only supposed to have one family in a house, right? That's a single family residence. It's set up that way. You're not really supposed to be generational living in the home. That's kind of the idea.
I'm not supposed to be.
Well, but we're getting back to that. And so a lot of people are moving either to these tiny houses that are more affordable,
right,
or these spaces that are larger, but you have multi-generational family or multi-generations living in there as a family. And so you're finding that while the home is bigger, the actual space each person gets in the home is smaller.
Right.
And so coming up with these creative designs to, 2 or 3 kids in a bedroom, how do you make that bedroom feel comfortable and special to each of them?
Boy, Georgia needs to get on that bandwagon.
I know. I don't know what all the details are, but California actually has tax laws and living set up for multi-generational in one.
Right. And I feel like it's sustainable, right? Because, I feel like people are always having kids. So we're always getting bigger. We always have more people.
Right.
But it's just with the housing economy, as we've kind of seen it for the past several years, or 3 years, right? That becomes so much more attractive now because of how expensive houses are. And some families just can't afford it.
Well, if you think about us as humans, before the U.S. fucked us all up and we got all crazy, we did live that way. You were born, your parents took care of you, then you made babies and your parents were excited, but then you took care of your parents, right? So to have multi-generations, 3 generations in under one roof, that was like a way of living from the dawn of time until the mid-1900s.
Right.
And then we decided, we don't like nobody no more. I live down the street from my mama, but I ain't living with my mama. Right? Well, why? Why for the last 100 years have we thought that's a good way of living? Obviously, it's not. And life is forcing us back to that. But I do think you're going to start seeing the tiny homes come into place, but I do think you're going to start seeing more multifamily setups, which are going to create that tiny home feel, because you're going to take big space and turn it into a space for 8 people instead of 4 or whatever that looks like.
So we have a property in the family. It's just an extra property that one of us has kind of kept just for whenever family kind of gets into a rough spot. And it's built for that. Right? It's got like mother-in-law suite on the first floor. And then when you go upstairs, it's almost like a whole different unit. Right? And it's like it's separated. You've got one set of folks staying in the mother-in-law suite, and they barely ever see the folks upstairs.
Right. It gives a nice separation.
They all go to the kitchen in that one family area.
Right.
Right. And then you've got a whole nother wing to the side with 2 other bedrooms.
Right.
And it's just like, I mean, you have the whole family, generations and all in here. Have the parents upstairs, or the parents downstairs, the parents of the young kids upstairs, and then as they grow, they can have their own rooms downstairs.
You'll see it happen more and more. So I'm excited to see how these smaller living spaces really come into our lifestyle as Americans. I think it's going to be more relevant over the next 10 years.
Right. Well, I agree with that. You know what time it is?
No, what time is it?
It's time for question quickies.
What do our folks want to know about this week?
We only have 2 today.
Okay.
Very similar questions. So what are some tips for first-time home buyers? And then what are some tips for first-time real estate investors in Atlanta specifically? So let's start with the first one, the first-time home buyers.
Don't go down a rabbit hole. So
what do you mean by that?
As a first-time home buyer, your budget sucks.
Oh yeah.
What you can afford sucks. Right? So let's be very clear. You're going to hate everything. Hurdle. Correct. You're going to hate everything you look at because more than likely you grew up in a house that wasn't your mom and dad's first home.
Right. It's like their 4th home.
Let's be very clear. By the time you came along and you're in your high school house that you grew up in, it's probably not what your parents originally started in.
Right.
And so as a first-time home buyer, it is very, 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 very easy to think, especially if you don't have a lot of parameters. I'm a first-time home buyer, I work from home, don't mind driving. As a first-time home buyer, you're probably going to drive because you're probably going to live an hour from your home, right? Because the closer you get to the city or the closer you get to the jobs, the more expensive things get. It's very easy to feel like I have to see everything on the market. Okay? So as a first-time home buyer, a lot of times what we do is when somebody's okay with attached and detached, we eliminate one of those 2 first, right? So here's what you can buy. You don't need to see everything on the market. You need to see 5 because that's going to give you an overall general view of condition, neighborhood quality, and location.
For that budget.
For that budget, right? You may look in East Point, you may look in Decatur, you may look in Stone Mountain, and you may look in Woodstock.
Right.
But it's still going to be a similar, most cities aren't that different from area to area, right? Like a big city, if you look at Atlanta and then you look at all the suburbs, for the most part, $200,000 is going to buy you the exact same thing no matter what neighborhood you're in, right? So then you decide, okay, am I going attached? Am I going detached? If you are going to go, you pick out one of the 2, then we tell our clients, let's go ahead and focus on an area. And so a lot of times what we do is we take the big, and we chunk it out in pieces and hone it in and make it a lot smaller.
Right.
So for example, I have a first-time home buyer who the guy who was bitching about the ceiling yesterday. We looked at a lot of homes. And then we had a conversation and he very much understood what I was telling him, right? That like Jim, you understand that we've looked at this, and he totally agreed. So we were able to decide that he didn't want to be in a single family residence because you can get a nicer place in a condo, right? Condos are cheaper. It looks better. The feel safer, the visual, a lot of times the updates are better.
The condo trap right now.
Oh no, they fixed that.
Oh,
yeah, condos. That's been
okay. I need to be updated.
It's on. Yes, we can talk about that. That is now fixed. If you don't know what's going on with condos, just look up the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac changes this year. If you had a condo and you're trying to sell it, you were kind of in a spot because you couldn't. But it took about 9 months. But it looks like lenders are finally coming up with a solution.
That's what's up.
Yeah. So that moving forward. But we pared him down. So he decided I want to live in a condo, right? And so then we looked at a couple different buildings. And we looked at a couple different areas and we started talking to him about what was important to him in an area. Well, the next thing that was important to him in an area was walkability. So that took him from Roswell, from like that Sandy Springs, Roswell area down to more the Midtown, Atlantic Station, like got him into, so we started really focusing. He really likes Atlantic Station.
Mm-hmm.
So we started focusing on Atlantic Station. So if you're a first time home buyer, just don't go down the rabbit hole.
Right.
Like you don't need to look at everything on the market.
Right.
Once you've looked at 5, that's what you can afford and that's what you're going to get.
Right.
So then it's a matter of just figuring out, okay, what's the less of the two evils? And then the second part of that is know what your goals are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is this a 3-year house? Is this a 5-year house? I understand when you get in there, it may turn into a 10-year house.
Right.
Like that's a lot of times that's what happens.
Or an even shorter one.
Correct. Well, let's see. Yes. And so know what your are, because if your goal is to be out in 3 years, like I don't want to live here for longer than that. This is not the quality of life I want.
Right.
Then go find a condo or a house that you can get a really good deal on, that is a B- house that needs a ton of renovation, and then spend the next 3 years putting in that sweat equity. Don't paint if you're not good, right? Like hire out the jobs that you're not going to be good at,
right?
But spend the 3 years to make the house from a B- to an A+ quality. And next thing you know, then you know that you can make the next goal happen in that time frame because you've looked ahead.
Right.
So I would say work with somebody who understands how to kind of foreshadow and see where the market is headed, because you'll have a good idea. Okay, if I turn this into an A+ house in 3 years, this should be roughly what I get if the market trends don't change. I don't have a crystal ball, but if the market trends stay the same, it's pretty history repeats itself.
Right. Right. I think one thing that I would throw in there is I'm pretty good about this, but I know a lot of people struggle with this, and this leads right to the next one as well. Same for first-time home buyers, same for first-time real estate investors. Stick to your budget, right? Because I feel like we had a whole section, we had a whole conversation on not getting bullied, right? You can very easily get bullied into a nicer home just because you're saying, oh, well, I don't like this, or well, I don't like that. It's like, well,
that happened to me in my first house. My agent convinced me to spend way more than I was prepared to spend, and
and it's like, and you have to like think to yourself, you know, like you said, you want to know how long you're going to want to stay in the house. We got to think about affording that the whole time.
Have a plan,
right? Yeah, same for prime real estate investors. If you have a specific budget, right, don't let some wholesaler or don't let some, you know, realtor or whatever come in and strong arm you into a larger house. Oh man, you know, if you just get a little bit more money, you can get into this, and this is a really easy flip, right? It's like, yeah, but it may not work for you.
We want you to spend more money. The more money you spend, the more money we make. So make sure you are working with a realtor who your deal doesn't put food on the table for them, and that's it, right? And by that I mean right now we have 5 active clients under contract closing in the next 60 days or less. Behind those 5, we have another 12 that are actively under contract with us, either trying to sell their house, getting it ready to sell. And we have like 4 or 5 listings coming up, or buyers who are kind of out there in the wings who are, you know, ready or getting ready to buy. So make sure that when you're working with somebody, you're working with somebody who 100% of the time will put your best interest at heart. A lot of times I'll get a first-time home buyer who will send me a house that's $50,000 over their max budget. And I'm like, that's an extra $500 on your mortgage every month. Can you actually afford that? Right. And a lot of times the answer is no, but because they see something pretty here and they don't have somebody explain how easy it is to make this ugly look pretty, they end up overspending and putting them in a situation. You know, I've got a client right now who called me yesterday and she's like, we had that conversation before she bought, right? And she was very confident she could, but she was counting on things that maybe didn't come to fruition. And I think a lot of us do that. So sticking to your budget is super important. You can get the bigger, better house next time.
Right. Exactly. Another thing I would say for first-time real estate investors is obviously you're going to want to grow a team, right? That's a whole tip in itself.
Yes. You
but
cannot do it all.
Aligning or even understanding incentives and how that's going to drive the team, right? So for instance, a realtor, it may be harder to use on a buy, right? Because your incentive is to keep the cost down. Whereas to your point, right, the more you end up paying, the more the realtor makes, right? Very good incentive to use them for the resale, right? Because they're going to be negotiating up to try and get more. Same thing for your contractor, right? You know, you're going to want a lower budget, right? Contractor may not have that same thought, right? They may be like, no, you need to go on up on this budget.
Money in my pocket.
Right. And so it's just like understanding those incentives up front, because like for the contractor, the easier thing to do is, look, I'll pay you more if we can finish early.
Yeah.
Right. Because then that's less holding costs.
Correct. Way makes sense to spend, and way where it makes sense to save.
Right. Yeah. Right. Anything else you would add for first time real estate investors?
No. I mean, I feel like we beat a dead horse and we talk about this a lot, but just stick to your plan, right? Like if your design, I'm going to make X and this is the plan, and you see a house and you just have to pay $6,000 more to get that house, don't pay it, right? Just stick to your plan. There will be deals out there that follow your model. And understand your numbers.
Right.
So understand your conversion rate. I think as a first-time investor, understanding that investor, first-time realtor, if you're in the real estate market, understanding your conversion rate is super important. How many phone calls does it take to get an appointment? How many appointments does it take to be able to submit an offer? And how many submitted offers does it take to get a deal?
Right.
Right. Once you know that, and that takes a little while, like I'm not saying you're not going to wake up tomorrow and go, I know my conversion.
Right.
Right. Like it took me a while to know my conversion.
Right.
But I do know how many calls it takes for me to pick up the phone before I solidify a client, right? Or solidify someone to meet with me. And it's very similar to real estate. So learn your conversion rates, keep track of your numbers.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode today. Thanks for joining for another episode of Spill the Tea with Laura and Dee. As always, if this was helpful for you or if you found this entertaining, smash that like button, subscribe for more videos. And if you have a question for a realtor or a real estate professional, a flipper, drop a question in the comment and we'll talk through it on one of our next videos.
That is absolutely true. Peace.
See y'all.
This is light work. Come on, spill the tea. Yeah. Ooh.